So, I know a lot of you guys wonder what I did before I was a teacher. It's a sad story. I worked at a calendar factory, but I got fired because I took a couple of days off. And we are back with another amazing poet, Claude McKay. Claude McKay. This man has a voice that I'm just going to let you find out on your own. I'm excited to jump into this poem today. I hope you are too. So let's talk about what we're going to do today. Today, you will analyze the form of Claude McKay's poem America. You're going to identify similes, personification, and find out what an English sonnet is. Okay? Now, we're not going to jump into the meaning of the poem today, though I think you'll probably be able to tell when we look at it. But we're mainly just going to look at the form in this lesson. If you remember what form is, we'll review. I want you to think about it. What is form when we're talking about poetry? So what are you going to need today? You're going to need a copy of America by Claude McKay. This is it right here. You're also going to need the Poetic Devices cheat sheet. It's from last week's packet. Okay, there should still be a couple of terms on that packet, that very first page when you open it. There should still be some terms on there you haven't filled in, and we're going to fill them in today. Also, you're going to need the America worksheet for this lesson, America by Claude McKay. I have the answers already. I did the work already. If you got all that, let's move on. Now, as always, we need to review what is the guiding question of this unit. What is the one thing we're trying to pull from this unit? So the guiding question is, how did African American authors express their black identity in poetry and literature during the Harlem Renaissance? Okay, so we saw how Langston Hughes expressed his identity, right? The speaker he created for that poem, the allusions he used in that poem created a real sense of pride and dignity and peace and strength, right? We're going to look at Claude McKay. He has a different approach. He uses different formal issues, and he also has a different interpretation to his poetry. So we'll look at his today. Okay, now the first thing you need to do is get out that Poetic Devices cheat sheet because we're going to fill in the last couple things on that sheet. So it's last week's packet. You see your little checklist on the very front page. You just open that first page, and then right there, you're going to see at the bottom those things we need to fill in. So pause the video, get that sheet, and start again when you have it in front of you. Okay, you're back. So you have it in front of you. Let's take a look at what we're going to fill in. First, we're going to fill in simile. What is a simile, you ask? Well, you should remember. A simile is comparing two things using like or as. Comparing two things using like or as. And we'll see an example of it here in a little bit. Pause the video if you need to write this. Okay, the next term we're looking at is personification. Now, personification, you should be able to have a clue here just looking at this word person. And if I, like personify, so to turn something into a person is what this means, to turn something into a person. So giving human traits to a non-human thing or object. Okay, giving human traits to a non-human thing or object. Again, we will look at that here in the poem. Pause if you need to write this down. All right, the English sonnet. Now, there's a lot that goes into this. An English, do you remember we talked about free verse? Go ahead and take 1 second here, and I want you to look on your cheat sheet at the term free verse. I want you to read what you wrote for free verse. So pause the video and read that. Remember what free verse is. Pause. Okay, so you saw that free verse is a type of poem with no set rhyme scheme, right? And we talked about that is something that Langston Hughes used to indicate the freedom of the African American spirit. Well, we're going to look at something called an English sonnet, and this is a poem with a set rhyme scheme. That means anyone who writes an English sonnet is going to be following certain rules. So let's look at some of those rules. You won't have enough room to write this on your on your little box there on your page. Here's the main thing I want you to get right here. The rhyme scheme is A B A B C D C D E F E F G G. A B A B C D C D E F E F G G. You say, what does that mean? You'll see it here in a little bit. But another thing with this form is that it's made of 14 lines. Okay, there are 14 lines of poetry on this, and that makes sense if you look at the rhyme scheme, right? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So I have 14 rhymes, which means I have 14 lines. Now, the crazy thing about this type of poem is that the poet will also limit himself to 10 syllables per line. Each line has exactly 10 syllables. Okay? Now, you think that's enough, but look, it's also made up of 3 quatrains and 1 couplet at the end. Now, whoa, that's ugly. If you look at your cheat sheet, you should be able to figure out what these terms mean. I'm not even going to define them for you. Okay? 3 quatrains and 1 couplet. It's all presented as one squished stanza. So the whole poem looks like one stanza, and it really is one stanza, but it's really actually made up of like a quatrain, a quatrain, a quatrain, and a couplet. So it's really made up of like 4 stanzas, because you count stanza 1, 2, 3, 4. But they're squished. There's no space between them. Okay, write down what you need to write down. Pause the video if you need to. Okay. Now, one last thing. You don't have to write this down, but I want you to think about it. Be aware of it. The content of this sonnet is usually it has to do with love or falling in love or being in love or appreciating love for something. Shakespeare is a famous author, Romeo and Juliet. He wrote a lot of very famous sonnets, and a lot of them were focused on love. So let's get into it. Let's look at this poem by Claude McKay. First, we're going to read through it, and then we will get to analyzing the form, all right? Okay, get your copy of Claude McKay's America. Have it sitting in front of you. And if you need to, pause the video until you have it in front of you. All right, so here we are. Let's go ahead and read this. Follow along with me, either on the screen or on your paper copy. Feel free to mark and annotate as you go. Any words you're unfamiliar with, you can circle them. But let's go ahead and look here. America by Claude McKay. Although she feeds me bread of bitterness and sinks into my throat her tiger's tooth, stealing my breath of life, I will confess I love this cultured hell that tests my youth. Her vigor flows like tides into my blood, giving me strength erect against her hate. Her bigness sweeps my being like a flood, yet as a rebel fronts a king in state, I stand within her walls, and not a shred of terror, malice, nor a word of jeer. Darkly I gaze into the days ahead, and see her might and granite wonders there, beneath the touch of time's unerring hand. like priceless treasures sinking in the sand. Wow, that feels a little different, doesn't it? Feels a little different from rivers. It's very different. Let's get into analyzing some of the forms that we see before we jump too much into content. I know you probably have a feeling from this that's different than Langston Hughes. It should feel very different from Langston Hughes. Let's jump in. So the first thing we're going to talk about are the similes that we can identify here. And to identify the similes, we are going to look for things that are what? We're going to look for two different words specifically. Look back at your cheat sheet if you're not sure. I'll give you a minute. Pause in a moment, and I want you to answer this question for me. What two words are we looking for with similes? Pause, go back to your cheat sheet. Okay, so we're looking for what two words? Okay, like and as. Like and as. Okay, so let's go back through here and read. As we go, we're going to circle anything we see with like or as. Although she feeds me bread of bitterness and sinks into my throat her tiger's tooth, stealing my breath of life, I will confess, I love this cultured hell that tests my youth. Her vigor flows like tides into my blood. There's like into my blood, giving me strength erect against her hate. Her bigness sweeps my being like a flood. There's like. Yet as a rebel fronts a king in state. Oh, there's as. I almost missed it. Hopefully you caught it. There's one more in here. I want you to go ahead and find it. Pause the video and I want you to find it. Pause. Awesome. Okay, so you're back. And here it is. Very end. Like priceless treasures sinking in the sand. All right, so let's take a look. Did we get it? Yep. Her vigor flows like tides into my blood. Her bigness sweeps my being like a flood. Yet as a rebel fronts a king in state, and like priceless treasures sinking in the sand. Oof. This guy knows how to use a simile. He's comparing things, and we feel that comparison. We feel what he's trying to say just with these comparisons here. Let's move on to personification. By the way, here's what I want you to do. I didn't give you this instruction, but you see this little worksheet right here? You should be working on this sheet, America. And since we've reviewed these similes here, I want you to go ahead and copy the line into simile 1, 2, 3, and 4. Go ahead and copy it into similes 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, pause the video. Okay, you're back. You have copied the lines there into the form section, not the content section, because we haven't looked at the meaning yet. We're just looking at what he's doing. All right, let's talk about personification. So what is personification again? Go back to your cheat sheet and look at that and come back. I want you to look over the definition of personification. Pause here. Okay? And you're back. So personification is where we're taking something that's not human and giving it human-like characteristics. I'll identify one for you, okay? And I want you to find the other one. I might have to race you because the first one I'm going to give you is really easy and obvious. What's this poem titled? America, yes. It's titled America. So it's about, is this a human? Is America a human? Like your neighbor named America? No, it's not a person. So this is an idea. This is a non-human. So let's look. Where's the personification? Although she feeds me bread of bitterness and sinks her tiger's tooth and sinks into my throat her tiger's tooth. So right here we get two of them, right? she's feeding the speaker, and she's sinking into the speaker's throat her tiger's tooth. Yikes. This is personification into an animal, okay? So he's actually referencing America as kind of a predatory animal here. I'm going to let you find the other one. There's one more in here that's really obvious. Well, I wouldn't say it's really obvious. It's there's this one's a halvesy, okay? This one's sort of her vigor flows. It's like, yeah, it's this. America can have energy. That's okay. There's something else here. We're turning something besides America into a person. I'm gonna have you look through the poem, see if you can find it. Where's the place where something besides America is personified? So find that. Push pause. All right. Hopefully you came back successful. What we're looking for here is time. Time is actually even given capitalized name here. This capital T, time. So beneath time's unerring hand, unerring means not messing up. To err is like error. An error is a mistake. So unerring, unmistaking, the hand. So time is given a capital name and given a hand. This is another example of personification. So here they are. This personification here, this one here. This one in the middle is a little halvesy. I'm not too sure that this is the best example of personification, so we're going to let it slide. We're mainly looking at the top and the bottom here. All right. You should write down those examples. You can paraphrase them, get the important parts. So, although she feeds me bread of bitterness, you could just write, she feeds me bread. Okay? And you could write, sinks into my throat. Okay? Stealing my breath. And time's unerring hand. Those would suffice for personification 1 and 2. This is 1, and this is 2. Okay, next slide. Again, pause if you need to. Okay, now we're going to talk about the English sonnet. First of all, it is 14 lines. Okay? And I want you to go ahead and write this down. You're going to have to fit a couple things in this box, so it's 14 lines. So let's count and make sure. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Whoops, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Okay, so it is 14. So we have the start of a sonnet, but that's not all. It has 14 lines. That doesn't mean it's a sonnet. It could just be a 14-line free verse poem. But we're not looking at free verse because we're also looking for 14 syllables. I mean, what? 10 syllables. 10 syllables per line. It's written there, Mr. Fairber. Oh, yeah. Okay, thanks. See, I don't follow my own instructions. I don't read the board when I should. So 10 syllables per line. I'm going to count the first line off so that you can see how I do this. And then I want you to check some of these other lines. Just check 4 or 5 of them. Just make sure. So although, syllables, although, okay. So I'm going to mark them here. Although she feeds me bread of bitterness. How many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Oh, he's doing it. Do you think he did the entire poem? What about this line is really, this is a long line. Like look at it comes out all the way to here. And this line is all the way indented here. Surely there's a different number of syllables because this is a shorter line. This top one here is a shorter line, and this is a longer line. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to count these 2 lines, count the syllables off, and see if they're both 10 or not. Count them off, push pause. Whoa. He did it. This man wrote this poem. Can you imagine trying to do this? This is tricky. I mean, he's expressing something, but he has to limit himself. Like, I'm sure there's some lines that he wanted to be more than 10 syllables, and some that he was like, I don't know if I have 10 syllables for this, but he made it work. He made every single one of these lines 10 syllables long. That's really impressive. He's being very, very careful about his word choices. Very careful. And it kind of explains how some of these lines are a little strange sounding, like the second line, and sinks into my throat her tiger's tooth. He doesn't say, and she sinks her tiger's tooth into my throat, or something like that. He kind of, wow, that, I'm trying to circle it if you can't see, but the line's a little bit funky. It's a little bit awkward, um, but that explains it. He's really trying to meet this requirement. Cool. Okay, so the next thing you need to write down is 3 quatrains and 1 couplet at the end. Before we get into that, we know it's squished. Okay, so let's look here. A quatrain is 4. So let's count off 4 lines. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, go ahead and count off 2 other quatrains and 1 couplet. If you're not sure what those things are, I want you to go back to your cheat sheet and look at it. I want you to count off 2 more quatrains and 1 couplet. Just like I did here, I put a little red bracket. I want you to bracket those, pause the video, and come back when you're done. Okay, so what you should have is you should have another bracket here. 1, 2, 3, 4. You should have another quatrain here. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then a couplet is 2, because it's a couple and a couplet. I'm going to draw a line here just so you can see what I'm about to do next to make a little more sense. Okay. So these are, even though they're not, there's no space between them, we're going to see that they do, these 4 have a relationship to each other that these 4 do not. Okay, let's look at it. So it's 1 squished stanza, and then we have a rhyme scheme. Hold on there, yeah, the rhyme scheme. Oh no, Mr. Fairber, what happened to the rhyme scheme? I thought I was going to try to write it down. Don't. And don't go back to your notes either, you cheater. You're cheating. I saw it. Actually, I just screwed up. I wasn't supposed to play that slide yet. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to find out the rhyme scheme of this poem. Don't cheat. Don't go back to your notes. I'll do the first one with you. Don't worry, okay? Stop freaking out on me. It's going to be okay. Let's do the first one together, and then I will reveal the answer. Please do this with me. It's great practice, and it's kind of fun, too. So let's look at this word bitterness, rhyme scheming here. Bitterness is my first rhyme, so it gets my first letter, which is what? A. Ugly giant A. The next word is tooth. Bitterness and tooth, do they rhyme? No. So this is a new rhyme, so it gets a new letter. B. Boop. Confess. Does confess rhyme with tooth or bitterness? Bitterness, confess. I do see the ness. It sounds pretty close. Let's say it's pretty close because, let's give him a pass. He's trying to rhyme and do the syllables and everything. Bitterness, confess, I will confess, bitterness. Yeah, it rhymes. So let's give it the A. Oof, yikes. And then last, youth. Does youth rhyme with anything here? Tooth and youth rhyme, so this gets B. So I've got A, B, A, B, A, B. What about when I come to blood? Do we have that rhyme anywhere? Nope. So it gets a new letter. What letter does it get? C. Okay. I want you to do the rest by yourself or with your partner. That's fine. Pause it here. Get it done. All right. Do you have what I have? Some of you are looking at me like, Mr. Fairber, are you serious? Jeer and there rhyme? I mean, kind of. It's called a slant rhyme. It's where it's supposed to rhyme, right? Because we have a pattern of things rhyming, and he's forcing us to make these rhyme in our heads. Jeer and there. they're sort of close. And I promise you, if you listen to any kind of music, and you really think about the rhymes, you'll notice this. You'll know that a lot of times artists don't have exact rhymes. They'll have rhymes that are pretty close. And again, it's called a slant rhyme. So, yeah, they rhyme-ish. The main thing is that we know these last two rhyme for sure. This, let me get my eraser. Ba-ba. A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, E, F, G, G. This is a classical English sonnet. Man, you guys analyzed the form of this thing like crazy. So, you did awesome. I think that's just about it for the day. Let's make sure. So today you analyzed the form of Claude McKay's poem America. You identified similes, personification, and rhyme scheme, which was the English what? Sonnet. Okay, so the English sonnet. That's about it. We're going to talk about what this thing means, and I don't know if you like it or not. It's pretty intense. I know you can feel it already, though. So I'll see you in the next lesson, and we'll get to it.